All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Well, folks, college football is back, and the 2024 college football season got started off in a big way for a variety of reasons. You're talking about a ranked team going on the road, really going on the road to the great country of Ireland to begin their college football campaign. I'm talking about Florida State. And of course, they had to have somebody to face when they got there, and they had a conference foe in Georgia Tech. So you got two conference foes traveling a long way away from home to get their college football season kicked off. We knew going in clearly there was going to be a winner and there was going to be a loser, and it was going to be a long flight for somebody back home and a joyous flight for somebody else as they headed back stateside. But you look at Florida State, and after they won the Atlantic Coast Conference last year, they entered this college football season with plenty of hype once again because why? The Seminoles began this year ranked 10th in the nation, and they're looking to win their league for the second consecutive year and also get to the college football playoff. Remember, that was a big controversy last year. Florida State going undefeated during the regular season and not getting in. Now, of course, the Seminoles packed their bags for Dublin to begin their season today against Georgia Tech. And they took on a Yellow Jacket squad that is looking to show that last year's winning season was no fluke. Now, the Yellow Jackets are a different team under head coach Brent Key. They went 4-4 under Key as the interim head coach in 2022 as he replaced the fired Jeff Collins, while he led them to a 7-6 mark, including a bowl appearance last year. Now, we saw this game basically get started off like some people expected it to. The Seminoles got going early. They took the opening kickoff right down the field and they executed a 7-play, 75-yard scoring drive, which was capped off by a 28-yard run from running back Lawrence Toafili to make it 6-0. And then Florida State surprised some people by going for the 2-point conversion out of the swinging gate formation. But whereas in recent years, we would have seen Georgia Tech begin to go in a shell, begin to panic, whatever you want to say. That was not the case. Why? Because these Yellow Jackets immediately responded. They marched down the field and set the tone. And I'm going to touch on that in a little bit with the 6-play, 79-yard drive to make it 8-7. Now, from there, it was, to me, the rest of the first half rather, really belonged more to the Georgia Tech defense. We saw them limit Florida State to a pair of field goals. And when it was all said and done, it was 14-14 at the break. And in that case, that's advantage Georgia Tech right there. Okay. So you look at it, the missed opportunities for me for Florida State in this game. I want to I want to start with the Florida State defense. Why? Because we saw two fumbles in the second half by Haynes King, and Florida State was unable to capitalize and make Georgia Tech pay for those. Quarterback Haynes King had one fumble late in the third quarter that put Georgia Tech behind the chains, and even and with the fumble, it was a scenario where you had about 4 or 5 maroon jerseys in the vicinity of the football, and it was one Georgia Tech lineman that was able to recover the football. Not only did Florida State not recover the football there, clearly, also you had a situation, like I said, they had Georgia Tech behind the chains, couldn't capitalize. Why? Because the Yellow Jackets rebounded, kept the ball alive, and got themselves a touchdown. To me, which really helped to change the tenor of this contest. And that capped off an 11-play, 89-yard drive that ate up more than 6 minutes of game clock. Now, we did see Florida State respond from there. They went on a 15-play, 84-yard drive of their own that ate up more than 8 minutes of game clock to knock the score at 21. But the bottom line is all day long, Florida State simply could not make enough big plays. We saw on Georgia Tech's last drive another fumble by quarterback Haynes King, and Florida State was unable to capitalize. We saw some missed throws from quarterback DJU today for Florida State, and at the end of the day, the Seminoles found themselves going home on the wrong side of a 24 to 21 win. But to me, from the Georgia Tech aspect, this game embodied the Jackets are becoming under head coach Brent Key. Why? Because Georgia Tech out physicaled Florida State today. You look at the ground game. The Yellow Jackets had 190 yards on the ground compared to 98 for Florida State. And Georgia Tech only ran the football 5 more times today than Florida State did. It's one of those where you saw it, where Georgia Tech went out there looking to impose their will. And to me, I think that touchdown run by Jamal Haynes in the second quarter to give Georgia Tech the 14-11 advantage, it kind of embodied Georgia Tech's mindset. It kind of embodied this game because we know about gang tackling on defense, but this was one of those where the will of that Georgia Tech offensive line as they pushed Jamal Haynes into that end zone and his legs kept turning right there. That was a big time impact right there. And for me, if you're Georgia Tech and you're Brent Key, this gives you an opportunity to establish your program, to really dig into the trenches. Because again, if you watched Georgia Tech play last year, it was a scenario where you knew you had to pack a lunch to beat them. Just ask Miami. Even ask Georgia. Okay, Georgia did beat Georgia Tech, but it wasn't like what it's been in recent years where the Bulldogs just simply ran roughshod over the Yellow Jackets. No, it's actually becoming a game again. And Brent Key is a guy that it's one of those over my dead body type mentalities that he has brought to his football team. And I'll tell you like this, anybody who's going to beat the Yellow Jackets, I'm not going to say that they're going to sit up there and win the national championship, but it's one of those, if you're going to beat them, you definitely got to go out there and pack a lunch. For Florida State, like I said, they simply did not make enough big plays. I know that there's going to be some people out there and say, well, maybe there's a little hangover from the way last season ended. I'm not buying that because that was a totally different team. But nonetheless, it's one of those, you look at DJU in his Florida State debut, and of course, the Clemson fans are going to look at him and say, well, he's back in the ACC doing what he did at Clemson. It's one of those for me, probably Oregon State was like a better fit for him offensively. And of course, a lot of that was with Jonathan Smith as a head coach. But nonetheless, I still think Florida State, has plenty of time to rebound and get this thing going. It's one loss. It's one tough loss. Nobody clearly wants to start this season with a loss. Nobody really wants to go out there and lose games, period. But there is plenty of time for Florida State to rebound. There's plenty of time for them to still get back into the college football playoff mix. It's one loss, yes. It's one conference loss, absolutely. But you look at Florida State's schedule going forward, and they do have an opportunity to rebound. Why? Because they're basically going to spend a month in Tallahassee. They've got Boston College at home on Labor Day night. Okay, then they're off. Then they host Memphis, and then they host Cal before they travel to SMU to cap off the month of September. But I'm looking at Florida State's schedule. They get an opportunity to get their sea legs back. They get an opportunity to get their swag back. I'm looking at that contest to begin the month of October rather, against Clemson. They got them at home. And I think you're going to see a different Florida State team. I think you're going to see a better Florida State team, a team that executes better. And that's not taking anything away from Georgia Tech. But the bottom line is Florida State definitely has a capability of playing better than what we saw today. And at the same time, not trying to sound like a hypocrite, but you know what? Hats off to Georgia Tech because they went out there, they executed for 60 minutes. They deserve to win this game. And, I'm sure that there are some people who probably wondered why Florida State was only a 10-point favorite over the Yellow Jackets today. I think Georgia Tech showed you why. Again, like I said before, you're going to have to pack a lunch if if you want to go out there and beat the Yellow Jackets this season. They are definitely going to be a tough out in the ACC. Like I said, Huge win for Brent Key. Huge win for the Yellow Jackets. And now, if you're Brent Key, you have an opportunity to really build off of this because Georgia Tech hosts Georgia State next week. Then they're in Syracuse to take on the Orange to begin the month of September before they host VMI. And then they're at Louisville on the 21st. So there's a very good possibility that we're talking about Georgia Tech 4-0. A lot of people are already saying Georgia Tech should be ranked. More than likely, they will be now. And again, getting back to Florida State as they look to turn things around, this loss, if you're looking for a silver lining, maybe it helps Florida State if Georgia Tech keeps on winning and they build some confidence because, down the road, let's say they have to meet again, possibly in the ACC championship game. And, you've got a good Georgia Tech team with a good record. People are going to say, hey, you know what? Maybe that loss by the Seminoles to begin the season wasn't that bad. But nonetheless, tough way to start the season if you're Florida State. I think this is a huge confidence booster for Georgia Tech. I know some people are going to say, well, why are conference teams playing each other to begin the year? You know what? That's the nature of the beast right now in college football. And it's not just conference teams playing each other. It's one of those, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a lot of ranked teams in non conference games face each other. And that's what it's all about. No hiding behind this, no talking about it. You got to get on the field and take care of your business. The bottom line was Georgia Tech was the better team today. They deserve to win. They did win. They are going to look to build off of this. And if your Florida State is back to the drawing board, but like I said, you got plenty of time to right this ship. And if you're the Noles, hopefully you can right this ship, get back into focus, and do what you have to do to potentially win the ACC. But nonetheless, kudos to the Jackets. Tough physical game in Ireland. Georgia Tech won it. They're heading back home very happy. And like I said, it's going to be a long flight back to Tallahassee for the Noles. But let's see how they rebound. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.